Today, we're opening up a fascinating storybook of sorts. I know, when we think of space, our minds instantly jump to those roaring rockets and brave astronauts, right? Almost like a vibrant cartoon or a children's illustration of the final frontier. But behind all that visible heroism is this invisible, absolutely crucial foundation of legal text. Yup, space law. Let's dive into the cosmic rulebook that actually governs all of this. So before we start reading the fine print, we gotta ask a question that literally everyone has wondered at some point. You're looking up at the night sky. Who actually has the right to claim those celestial bodies? If a nation plants a flag on the moon, like in those classic storybook illustrations, do they just own it? Can a private company roll up, start mining an asteroid, and claim the land as their own? Let's find out. To get to the bottom of that, here's a quick look at our agenda. First, governing the final frontier. Second, the Outer Space Treaty. Third, rescuing stranded astronauts. And finally, number 4, space damage and liability. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, governing the final frontier, and why space law is even a necessity in the first place.
Look, space isn't just some empty void. It's actually a super bustling environment. Without a legal framework, this frontier could easily turn into a chaotic free-for-all. To prevent that, the United Nations realized pretty early on that we needed basic rules. We're talking multilateral treaties designed to maintain international harmony, promote cooperation, and honestly, just avoid chaotic developments that could seriously threaten peace back down here on Earth.
And you can see that urgency right here on this timeline. These are the 5 core UN treaties that basically make up the foundation of space law. Notice those dates? From the Outer Space Treaty in '67 to the Moon Agreement in '79, these were drafted right in the absolute heat of the Cold War. Humanity was literally taking its first steps off the planet, and the global superpowers realized, okay, we need some serious ground rules before things escalate out there. Let's flip the page to Section 2, the Outer Space Treaty. This is really the cornerstone of the whole system. Just to give you a sense of scale on this, as of March 2024, an incredible 115 countries are parties to this foundational treaty. It was originally signed by the US, the Soviet Union, and other major powers, completely opening the door for monumental international cooperation. Add in another 22 countries that have signed but not yet fully ratified it, and you've got a massive global consensus on how we're supposed to behave in space. So, what are the actual rules? Well, the treaty lays out some powerful guiding principles. First off, outer space is free for exploration and use by all states on an equitable basis. Second, and hey, this answers our earlier question, there is strict non-appropriation. No nation can claim sovereignty or ownership over the moon, Mars, or any celestial body, period. Third, space has to be used for peaceful purposes, meaning absolutely no weapons of mass destruction in orbit. And finally, everything we do up there has to foster international cooperation. Now this part is brilliant. The treaty perfectly bridges the gap between governments and private enterprise. It explicitly says states assume direct responsibility for both their own national space activities and the activities of their private citizens, meaning a country can't just outsource a shady mission to a private company to dodge the rules. Nope. Nations are held directly accountable for anyone launching under their umbrella. Moving right along to Section 3, rescuing stranded astronauts, specifically looking at the 1968 agreement. Ratified by 98 countries as of early 2022, this treaty dictates exactly what happens in emergency situations. Think of it like international maritime rescue law, but for spaceships. If a capsule comes down in an unintended spot, maybe foreign territory, the middle of the ocean, or anywhere outside state jurisdiction, this agreement binds nations to step up, rescue the astronauts, safely return them, and even return the space objects themselves. But here's a pretty sobering reality check for you. The legal text clearly distinguishes between coming down on Earth versus an accident out in space. Because despite all these cooperative rules, actual rescue operations while astronauts are still out in the void of outer space, they aren't currently possible. The law is there for when they make it back to Earth, but space itself remains incredibly unforgiving. Okay, let's look at the financial side in Section 4, Space Damage and Liability. Basically, who pays when space breaks? Under Article 2 of the Convention, we hit this concept of absolute liability. If a launching state space object causes damage on the surface of the Earth, or say to an aircraft in flight, they are absolutely liable to pay compensation. You don't even need to prove negligence here. Dropping a satellite from orbit is considered an ultra-hazardous activity. If your hardware hits a building, you're paying for it. No excuses. But flip over to Article 3, and there's a really clear distinction based on where that damage actually happens. If the crash happens away from Earth's surface, like two objects hitting each other out in orbit, the launching state is only liable if the damage is actually due to their fault, or the fault of someone they're directly responsible for.
To put that simply, just picture these two scenarios side by side. On the left, a piece of a rocket crashes into a house. That's an ultra-hazardous risk to the public, so absolute liability. On the right, two satellites collide in orbit. Because that's happening in the designated operational zone of space, you actually have to prove who made the mistake or had the technical failure. That's fault liability.
And wow, does it get intricate under Article 4? Space missions are almost never solo endeavors these days. If two or more states launch together and cause damage to a third party, they are jointly and severally liable. This means the injured party can look at any of the launching states involved and demand full compensation, leaving those partners to sort out the financial mess among themselves based on who was actually at fault.
A perfect, almost comical example of this puzzle is the 1999 Sea launch. Picture this. A consortium with a U.S. firm as the main contractor, using Ukrainian rockets, launched from a platform managed by a Norwegian company and parked out in the high seas 1,400 kilometers south of Hawaii, literally just to save fuel. If something had gone wrong there, figuring out that joint liability across all those different actors would have been an absolute jurisdictional nightmare.
So, as we close this cosmic storybook for today, I want to leave you with a thought. These foundational treaties were brilliantly designed back in the Cold War to prevent superpowers from clashing. But today, we've got massive commercial satellite constellations and private space tourism booming. Are these 1960s treaties going to be robust enough to handle the modern commercial space race? It's a huge question that the next generation of explorers will definitely have to answer. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep looking up and keep asking questions.